Alright, I'm Becca Ploessl. I'm here today to talk to you about communication and technology. Did you know children ages 8 to 18 spend over 7.5 hours a day, 7 days a week, using social media sites outside of school? We communicate more with our hands than our mouths, not through gestures, but through messages we type out. We are wrapped up in the new technology that we are forgetting how to engage and interact with each other face to face. Our communication has gone from human contact to technological contact within the last decade. Access to technology has grown fivefold in 2 years. People all over the place are using their phones to communicate with others in settings that you shouldn't be, like out to eat or with friends, anytime that you should be contacting people when you're with them. And the advancement of technology such as social media and texting is negatively affecting face-to-face communications among young adults and children. What affects face-to-face communication? All of the advancements in technology are what is affecting face-to-face communication, such as emails that you send at work when you can walk over to the person that you're working next to instead of sending them an email. Texting throughout the day all the time can affect your face-to-face communication because you could be with them, or texting somebody while you're talking to somebody is not ever a good idea. Or Snapchatting, Instagram, using Facebook to message people, and Twitter, YouTube, and then when little kids are playing games on their iPads. Technology has taken over the world of communication, and phones are replacing our human contact. Instead, people send emails, text, Snapchat all day long, and when you're doing that, there's no physical interacting. And it is crucial to understand nonverbal communication, because in social situations, we need to modify our behavior in response to the reaction of others. Some important aspects of face-to-face communication are visual cues and vocal cues. And some of the visual cues would be facial expressions. So when you're talking to somebody, you can tell they're happy if they're smiling or if they're laughing, or if they're shocked, they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, what?" And then making eye contact helps know if they're into the conversation or not. And then making gestures helps to see if they're attentive and their posture. If they're sluggish, then they clearly don't care what you're talking about. And when you're doing that over texting, you can't tell their facial expressions unless they send emojis, but that's not really. Some vocal cues are pitch, tone, volume, and rate. So if their pitch is high, they're clearly excited about what they're talking about. If it's low, then it's just a normal conversation, or they may be sad, and stuff like that. I have a quote here from Dr. Catherine Steiner Adhere, and it says, "As a species, we are very highly attuned to reading social cues, and there's no question kids are missing out on very critical social skills. In a way, texting and online communicating, it's not like it creates a nonverbal learning disability, but it puts everyone in a nonverbal disabled context where body language and facial expressions and even the smallest kinds of vocal reactions are rendered invisible." So here she's trying to say that when you are texting and stuff, you can't see the perception of thoughts and feelings. You just are reading messages and kind of understanding their emotions. And here, nonverbal clues are just as important as the words we say, and body language and facial expressions are also to help understand if they're attentive or engaged in the conversation. Some consequences of not being able to communicate face-to-face. There was a decrease in the amount of time youth spent interacting face-to-face may eventually have significant consequences for their development of social skills and their presentation of their self. So in the real world, if you can't communicate with people, it's hard for you to get a job, it's hard for you to do anything where you have to express yourself and maybe get a better position somewhere, is an example of that. And then there was a study at the UCLA that discovered that 6th graders who spent 5 days without phones did considerably better at reading human emotions than their classmates who spent hours looking at their phones every day. And this research indicates that less time spent participating in face-to-face communication, that the more social issues they are going to have in the future. Alrighty, and then there's a quote from Paul Booth, who's a professor at DePaul University in Chicago. "There has been a shift in the way we communicate. Rather than face-to-face interactions, we're tending to prefer mediated communications." And as Floyd said in our Communication Matters book, humans are such social beings that when we cannot socialize or interact, their mental and physical health suffers. So that just proves that if we can't learn to communicate with each other, then it's going to be harder for us to interact. And then there was this study at Elon University that said 92% of respondents believe technology negatively affects face-to-face communication. And this was a study that was done to determine the level of engagement individuals have with cell phones and with each other in face-to-face scenarios. So they kind of observed students that were together, and if one's on the phone, they did a study to ask questions on if it affected the conversation or if it didn't affect it, and the students just answered that. And then another one was 89% of respondents believe there was a degradation in conversation amongst the presence of technology, which would have been that. And then one of the students in the research said technology is making face-to-face communication much more difficult because people use technology as a crutch to hide behind. And now we're on to texting. Teenagers between the age of 12 to 17 report using text messages in their daily lives more than any other form of communication, including face-to-face interaction. And texting and face-to-face interactions are completely different things. Even though you are both communicating, it's not the same. Now, social media. Websites and other online means of communication that are used by large groups of people to share information and to develop social and professional contexts. Social media, according to a survey, 22% of teenagers log onto their favorite social media site more than 10 times a day. And that just shows how addicted some people are to their social media sites, and instead of communicating with each other. And overall, the overuse of phones to text and check social media is negatively affecting face-to-face communication among the younger generation.